Welcome to Tea Time, where you're served trendy, entertaining news. This was Paul Mackenzie Ndege when his church, Good News International in Malindi, flourished few years back. He wasn't the shaggy, confused person gracing the screens today. He started his church back in 2003 as a small evangelical center alongside his wife, Joyce Muikamba. They then moved to a village called Migingo in Malindi, where he set up a church in a walled compound where his family still lives to date. His wife, Joyce, helped in preaching as a co-pastor, and Mackenzie claimed to have power to speak to God directly. In his sermons, he claimed to deliver words as given by God himself. Around 2016, Mackenzie acquired a TV station after one of his followers, Kennedy Mocharo, sold his property in Lamu at a throwaway price of 20 million and handed over all the money to him, abandoning his family and responsibilities. The property was valued over 100 million back then. The man would die 2 months later in unclear circumstance. Several cases of people selling their properties and giving Mackenzie as they await to meet Jesus would then follow, the recent one being Betty, a hair hostess who quit her 11-year job, left her husband and sold her lifelong investments at a throwaway price of 7 million, heading with the money to Mackenzie's Shakahola church. Betty is suspected to be among the dead bodies being retrieved in graves in Shakahola. It is claimed that Mackenzie used the money that Kennedy Mocharo gave him to buy pieces of land in Malindi and Mombasa, 2 vehicles, and started the TV station. Through his TV station, Mackenzie reached so many people, and his teachings were basically on times, evilness of Western ways of life like medical services, education, food, sports, music, etc. Mackenzie dwelt on the usefulness of life and stressed on the afterlife. He preached about the second coming of Christ, which according to him was so soon. His timeline of the second coming was always less than a year. He also focused on the wrath that awaited those who would be alive by then. In 2018, Dr. Ezekiel Mutua, through KFCB, ordered for the immediate closure of the TV station. This was a year after Mackenzie and his wife had been arraigned in court for religious radicalization, knowing and unlawful promoting extreme belief for the purpose of facilitating ideologies to advance religious and social exchange. It is unclear how this case ended, and despite the orders to shut down the TV, Mackenzie continued with anything that showed how connected he might have been. Remember, at a point, he threatened the then Kilifi women rep Aisha Jumwa when she questioned some of his teachings and why he kept sick people in his compound instead of taking them to the hospital. In 2019, Mackenzie will again hit headlines when 4 siblings from Mumias left home for his church and went missing. 3 of them will later resurface. This, plus the pressure put on him to close unregistered school he operated in his compound, prompted him to move from Gingo to Shakahola. He closed the church, built some of his vehicles, then bought the Shakahola land in the name of starting a farming venture. People who went to see him at where his previous church used to be in Migingo were referred to his Shakahola farm, and according to neighbors, a lot of people went there but few left. Mackenzie had fasting supervisors who would monitor the poor souls in the bush as they starved to death. They are also the same people who work as undertakers for him. It is claimed that while leaving Migingo and closing his church, he sold the TV station, equipment, and one of his vehicles to Pastor Ezekiel of New Life, and even some of his evangelization tools. Note that Pastor Mackenzie is not living with his family in Shakahola. The family live in Migingo village in a gated compound where he had his church, and he has been putting up another beautiful family home few distance from Malindi town. As he brainwashed other people and their children to die in order to meet Jesus, his family is living their best life from the fools he gave him as they prepare for the holy journey. Remember, most of these people are fasting in the bush day and night, facing the harsh weather conditions and other risks. President Ruto described Mackenzie as a criminal disguised as a priest and compared the massacre, which has left 112 people missing, to an act of terrorism. Inspector General of the Police, Japhet Koome, said 29 survivors have been rescued and were receiving treatment. Meanwhile, the Director of Public Prosecutions, Nudin Haji, said his office will conduct investigations with possible charges of terrorism and religious radicalization. Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki has called for stricter regulations on religious centers as detectives from the Directorate of Criminal Investigations unearth more disturbing details about the Good News International Church cult in Malindi, Kilifi County. President Ruto described Mackenzie as a criminal disguised as a priest and compared the massacre, which has left 112 people missing, to an act of terrorism. According to the president, people like Paul Mackenzie, the controversial preacher linked to the cult, do not belong to any religion but to a prison. Now that you are in the know, subscribe for more updates.